Bar in East St. Cloud has long claimed to be the oldest bar in St. Cloud. I know it's been around a long time, but is that an accurate statement? With a lot of help from Mary Ostby over at the Benton County Historical Society, we did some digging to find out the truth. According to city documents, way back in 1880, at the age of 19, a man by the name of Frank Beaudreau applied for and was granted the first saloon license that was ever issued in the city of St. Cloud. Now, it's not clear if he actually used that license immediately, as there are reports that he opened up a lunch and a soft drink business with no mention of first serving alcohol. So in an oral interview conducted with Frank's wife, Flora, after he died, she said he ran that lunch stand for about 3 years, and then he bought a property at 418 East St. Germain Street where he opened up a Beaudreau Saloon. Now here's the catch. 418 East St. Germain Street isn't that location. It's actually that location. This is the location of Frank Beaudreau's saloon that he ran starting in 1884. St. Cloud City Directory still listed his occupation in 1888 as a teamster, but by 1892, he was officially a saloon keeper. Now, Frank's saloon did have some trouble very early on. It was reported that on August 1st of 1886, just 2 years after opening his bar, there was a fight in his establishment with one man being kicked in the stomach. He died 2 days later. The man who kicked him was found guilty of manslaughter, and he spent 18 months in prison down in Stillwater. Frank Beaudreau ran his bar at that original location until he died in July of 1935 for about 50 years at that location. Of course, Prohibition lasted from 1920 until 1933, so it's likely that during those years it was a soft drink establishment. It is clear that Frank Beaudreau had become a very prominent business leader in East St. Cloud because news of his passing was covered by the Twin Cities newspapers. Frank was also the first foreman of the very first fire department ever established in East St. Cloud. So what about the current Beaudreau's Bar building? There's a brick in the front of the building with the Beaudreau's name on it, so we know it's original to the family. Well, property records show that Frank Beaudreau's original saloon obviously did very well for him because he ended up buying most of the properties in the 400 block of East St. Germain Street, including the building at 414 East St. Germain Street, the current Beaudreau's location. Back to the newspaper article about his death. It stated that Frank's son, Walter, was running that business. The year it was built and its original business model isn't clear, but a sign on the bar inside the building says established in 1907, which could be a good indication of when that building was built. However, it's unlikely that the original business was a bar, given there was already a Beaudreau's Bar right next door. So what we do know is that during the Prohibition years, the business was a candy store, and they sold root beer on tap for a nickel. At least that was the official business model. It was also a place where Walter Beaudreau was known to sell moonshine. So there's a great oral history with a man by the last name of Nystrom, and he said that when he was a little boy, he and his little friends, they would sit here on this side of the street across from Beaudreau's Bar, and they'd wait for federal agents to show up because they would try to arrest Walter Beaudreau, who was inside. And in the oral history that Mr. Nystrom recorded, he talked about Walter Beaudreau having a prosthetic leg, and he walked with a limp, and he had a cane. And so as the federal agents were trying to drag Walter Beaudreau out of the bar, he would oftentimes try to hit them with his cane to try to stop them from arresting him.
He had a couple episodes with that and ended up doing jail time for it.
And what you believe, and we don't know for a fact, but what you believe is that Walter and Frank, father and son, were probably working together, right? Frank is a well-established businessman in East St. Cloud, so they're trying to keep his name clean, and Walter was kind of the fall guy.
We've seen that in history before with the moonshine business in Sauk Rapids, where, a couple of the family members are working together and only one gets caught.
The agents finally did get Walter Beaudreau, who was tried in federal court in Duluth in 1929. He pled guilty to bootlegging and was fined $400 and given 4 months in jail. We do know that after Prohibition ended in 1933, Walter Beaudreau transitioned the current Beaudreau's into a legal liquor establishment. Again, an article in the Twin Cities newspaper reporting on Frank Beaudreau's death in 1935 stated that Walter was operating a liquor store next to the saloon which his father started.
So in Frank's probate of 1935 era, the building that he was in incredibly rough shape, and they're having to make improvements in order to get it feasible for a new tenant or whatever. But at that time, you see Walter's business coming up, and so I'm pretty sure that they're basically transferring father to son, and son is taking up where dad's left off.
After his father's death and closure of the original bar in 1935, Walter obviously transitioned his business from a liquor store to a full bar. Walter ran that business at 414 East St. Germain Street until he died in March of 1949. His obituary said he died at the bar at the age of just 58 years old. With Walter's passing, the Beaudreau family got out of the bar business, with Beaudreau's having a handful of different owners over the years. Fortunately for all of us, they opted to keep the Beaudreau's name. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to find any old photos of either of the two bars or either of the two men. So again, here's what we know. Beaudreau's does have, in fact, the distinction of being the very first legal saloon in the city of St. Cloud, dating back to 1884, 138 years ago. The first saloon, owned by Frank Beaudreau, was at 418 East St. Germain Street that he ran from about 1884 until he died in 1935. And the second bar, Beaudreau's Bar, that we now know today, has been at 414 East St. Germain Street from about 1935 until the current day today. Jim Maurice, WJON.